ברכות 3b. ואמר רבי זריקה, אמר רבי עמי, אמר רבי יהושע ben Levi. Here, the same way that the Gemarah have it many times, since you bring a memra, you bring some idea from one of the Rabbein, so you bring more. But before it was three different components. One is Rabbi Zrika, Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yehoshuah ben Levi, the previous session. So it's just continuation. It's not much to do with the subject matter, but it has to do with the same memra, with the same rabbis, they want to keep it. So the idea, it speaks about the dignity of the deceased. Those of you who are familiar, you just finished the period of mourning, so you're very familiar with that. There are certain halachot applied to the time of mourning. One of them is the idea that we are visiting a cemetery without putting those who have the tradition to put the tzitzit outside of the body, outside of the clothing, they put it in order not to embarrass the dead. So in our language, it's some type of feeling that the dead is still alive. If you go further, you read in the book called Bridge of Life, Gesher HaChaim by Rabbi Tukochinsky, which also translated to English, a lot of information about the seven process between the time of passing until the completion of burial. You can read by Rabbi Lem, the book which we studied not long ago, the book dealing with passing, mourning and passing. Rabbi Kolech, may rest in peace, also writes the Jewish Mourners Book of Why. So it's a lot of information about feeling that the deceased even cannot communicate, but the soul is still there. So the idea is that about 2 meters each side from the deceased, we should not involve with anything but things that relate to the deceased. If it's a Torah scholar, so there's the word of Torah that he said. If it's just mundane words, it has to be some relationship to the deceased. אמר רבי אבא בר כהנא לא אמרן אלא בדברי תורה, אבל מילי לעלמא לית לן בה. So he hold that this ruling was said only in regard to Torah matters. But in regard to the just mundane words, so it's no objection of speaking that not really connected to the deceased. And V'ikra de Amrei, it's another phase to understand it. אמר רבי אבא בר כהנא לא אמרן אלא אפילו בדברי תורה וכל שכן מירא דעלמא. This ruling that one can have a discussion while there is a deceased there, it's only said even in regard to the word of Torah, but certainly in regard to the general world matters. So the Ritva explains, so people who are around the deceased, they should feel connected and express solely the whole idea of eulogizing over the deceased, or again, following the Gemarah in Shabbat that said in the Shabbat 152, the Gemarah said that it's some type of feeling or communication that the deceased is still around, and therefore we should not cause him any feeling of distress, since we talk the word of Torah, and the person, the deceased, cannot communicate it. The Shulchan Aruch said in Yoreh De'ah Shin Dalet Mem, and I quote, באותו חדר שהמת נמצא בו, in the room that the deceased dwell, אין מדברים בפני המת בדברי תורה אלא בדבריו של המת. We did not discuss any word of Torah, only things that relate to the deceased, או דברים שהם לכבודו, or things that relate to the deceased honor. ואילו בדברים אחרים בתוך 4 מותר אין להשיח אלא בדברי המת, ומחוץ להן מותר. Which means, again, it's around 2 meters, 4 amot. Amma, it's about the size of the hand. So 4 amot is the proper measure of focusing on deceased, and it's some type of feeling that deceased is there. The David, now we return to our subject, which is King David and his deeds, and that you wake up in the middle of the night to serve God. ודוד בפלגה דלילי אהב והקאי, So David, you tell me that he is woke up at the middle of the night. They said in other verse that he was even much earlier, in the early part of the evening. Dichtiv, kidamti, I arose. Listen carefully to this word. Baneshef, neshef, neshef, in a general sense, it's evening. Va'ashavea, and I pour out my heart, King David said. So here we have a discussion over the word neshef, what exactly it means, the word neshef. וממאי דהי נשף אורתה הוא דכתיב בנשף בערב יום באישון לילה ואפלה. And from where you derive the whole idea that the word neshef means evening. Why? Because they said there is a pasuk that said at neshef, at the daylight went, and the blackness of night and darkness. So again, there are several ways of understanding the word neshef. You can go by the idea that it's night, or you go by the way that it's written in the Tehillim in Psalm 119 that it's even earlier, the time that the evening time. So he said, "Beneshev beishon laila ve'afela." That's the lesson, as we mentioned. It's the book of Proverbs in chapter 7, pasuk 9, Mishlei Zayin Tet. That's it means that David woke up not just at night but much earlier in the evening time. So how do you explain? So now the Gemarah resolved the contradiction in all the idea of interpretation. The first verse, at midnight I arise to thank God. So what's the real understanding? Amar Rav Oshaya, Amar Rabbi Acha. By the way, it's always a way that the Gemarah explain to us when it's the contradictions. They bring different sources and they reconcile it. We explained the other day that in the 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael, which we said every day, the last principle is that when you have two contradictions with two different biblical phrases, you have the third that would reconcile. So it's a very common. Amar Rav Yoshua, Amar Rabbi Acha. Rav Oshaya said by the name of Rabbi Acha, Hachei ka'amar. This exactly what David said. Me'olam lo avar alai chatzot laila b'sheina, which means that I always woke up and before the midnight, meaning the midnight never passed me while I was asleep. I always awake before the midnight. So here, in a sense, the Rashba explained that it's stating that even those occasions that he have a chance to sleep at night, imagine with all of his troubles and everything, he arises before the midnight to worship and pray. So it's a discussion here. Rabbi Zera, I have a different school of thought. He said, Ad chatzot laila haya mitnanem kesus, mikan va'elach haya mitgaber ka'ari. Which means until the midnight he was some type of doze like a horse. Elliot, you have a business of horses, right? We ride horses with you, so you know that the horse is not in a state of sleeping, at least not recognized by us as in a state of sleeping. You don't see a horse in that sense. So it means that he was dozed. Until midnight, David would doze like a horse, but from that point, he would make himself strong like a lion. That's the Mishnah said in the Ethics, that the person should rise like a lion to serve the Lord. The third way of thinking, Rav Ashi Amar, Ad chatzot laila haya osek b'divrei Torah, mikan va'elach b'shirot v'tishbachot. Rav Zera hold that David was so preoccupied with Torah and service of God that the sleeping was in between whatever it is, but he basically was occupying with study Torah until the middle of the night, and then all these beautiful psalms that he recites was from the middle of the night and onward. He praised God, which Rashi here explained that the word that he used the word at midnight I will rise to thank you. The second half of night was focusing on Tehillim. We talked the other day about the whole idea of saying Tehillim, say psalms. In some Kabbalistic rabbis hold that it's not recommended to say some at early part of the night versus the end of the night before the dawn is the most time to say those prayer. The Jerusalem Talmud explain a very different interpretations. He said that all this contradiction between the two, it's go, by the way, soon you see by Rabbi Natan. We said we're dealing here with the king. The king is busy with different feasts and celebration and ceremonial. You know that king of the world to this very day are extremely busy with ceremonial matters. So King David always woke up in the middle of the night and he was make sure that he was wake up before the first watch. That's the Jerusalem Talmud said here. Now is a discussion over the word neshef. We're focusing on the word neshef. The neshef otahu? What does neshef, the word nun shin pesofit in Hebrew, meant evening? Let's see, they bring different sources that it show different. דכתיב ויקם דוד מהנשף עד הערב למחרתיים. We said clearly a sentence in the book of Samuel that David fought and he smote them from the neshef until the evening of the next day. Ma'elav mitzafra vad leila. In a simple way of understanding the Hebrew text, it means from the time of the morning until the evening time. No, the verse means me'ota v'ad ota. They reconcile by saying that it's from the evening, from the neshef until the next evening. So they said, if you tell me that it's basically applied what we said in the book of Samuel, from neshef to neshef, from evening to evening, lichtov, so the pasuk should say clearly meha neshef ve'ad neshef. So it should be from the neshef, from the evening evening until the following evening, or meha erev ad erev. There are places in the Torah that said me'erev ad erev tishbetu shavatchem. It's common thing to say that from the evening until the evening. So they use the word neshef until the evening. So indication neshef mornings, not evening. Rava explained and said trei nishpehavu. There is a two meaning of the word neshef. Don't mix them out. There is a two different way of understanding the word neshef. Nashaf lelia ve'atei yemama. Nashaf yemama ve'atei lelia, which means when the night departs and day arrives, right? And also the day departs and night arrives, which means in one place you said that David smote them from the neshef until the evenings. What's the neshef mean? From the morning to the evening it was a war, and he fought the whole day until the evening time. But that's different than we said I arose in the neshef, which means, especially said, and I cry out, it means in the evening. As we said before, the great Kabbalistic rabbis tells us that the person who want to reach the best time, it's from Tikkun Chatzot, for the middle of the night, prayer and saying Tehillim before the dawn. They express it as a time like the divine providence is out, crying over destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple, and therefore it's a very good time to focus on praying. Now we have another discussion over what exactly it means Chatzot. If you ask a astronomist like Dr. Bruce, so if we ask you as a physicist that work with the past president of United States, etc., what exactly the Chatzot, and we discuss Sha'ot Zmaniyot. So you see that it's something that can be varied. It's hard to determine the exact fixed time for the Chatzot, because each and every night it changes. You go from the time of the sunset to sunrise. So here, the verse at midnight, David said, I'll arise to thank you. So it means indirectly what it's alluded, that David knew clearly the exact moment of the midnight. So now we ask a question, ודוד מהווה ידע פלגה דלילה אימת? משה רבנו לא ידע. You tell me that David was higher than Moses, the Moshe Rabbeinu, that he knew exactly when is the midnight, while Moses didn't know? דכתיב, when Moses told the people, that they should prepare themselves for the Passover offering and to be ready for the exodus from Egypt. So he said, Ka, with kaf, Ka chatzot halayla, at about mid of the night, ani yotze betoch Mitzrayim. The word of the Lord said, at about of mid of the night, I shall go forth in the midst of Egypt. My kachatzot, why they use the word kaf? You know that the Torah is very prudent with letters and words. Ileima de amar lekut shabrichu kachatzot. If you tell me that the Almighty said to Moses, it's about midnight, mi'ikas feika kamei shmaya, are you doubt the idea that before God there is any question about the exact time of the middle of the night? The Almighty knows everything, so He can't use the word kachatzot to say that it's like about the middle of the night. It can be like that. It has to be a reason. So why use this word kachatzot instead of bachatzot? Bachatzot is the exact time of middle of the night. אלא ואמר לי בחצות ועתה אי ואמר כחצות. על מה? מספקא לי. God, one school of thought that God told Moshe Rabbeinu it's bachatzot, middle of the night. But Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't sure what exactly the exact second of the chatzot, as he used the word instead of ba, ka, about middle of the night, kachatzot. So if that's the case, means that alma misapkale, that you see that Moshe Rabbeinu was in doubt was exact midnight. So if Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't sure what is exactly midnight, you tell me that David knew. So they said, David simanah havale. David have some type of sign that he will know that he revealed to him when is exactly the time of the midnight. How? So they said, Amar Rav Acha bar Bizna, Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida, it's the name of Rabbein, Kinor haya talui lemala mitato shel David. David have a harp that hung at his bed, וכיוון שהגיע חצות לילה, when it was a midnight arrived, בא רוח צפונית ונושבת בו. The northern wind came and blew it, ומנגן מאליו, and it played by itself. What does that mean? So there are several understanding with this. There is one school of thought that said that in ancient time it's called a aolis, nevalim aolim, which means that it's a certain harp that used to blow the wind in order to create a noise. In our times, we use it as a word klei neshifa, like a saxophone, clarinet, flute, etc. But it doesn't mean the violin of our days. They just use the Hebrew word kinor. Here they use the word harp. It means he set it up. Those of you who have the privilege to be in Eretz Israel, in Yerushalayim, or in the certain places in Israel, you see that there is a certain time that is a very strong wind coming. So King David, in his geniussy, he put on his bed this harp, and he was waiting for the certain time for the wind to blow, which created a special noise, and that noise, you know that this is the signal of the middle of the night. It's called northern wind. The Tosefta said it, and others said that that's Rabbeinu Hai Gaon elaborated that, but it's basically a certain time that he woke up, and therefore he knew when is exactly the chatzot. So now they said, when he heard that, מיד היה עומד ועוסק בתורה עד שעלה עמוד השחר. So the minute he heard that noise of the harp, he woke up and he was occupying himself with the Torah until the dawn. So they said, כיוון שעלה עמוד השחר, so the moment that it's already arise, the dawn begin, so he said, נכנסו חכמי ישראל אצלו. So the Riyaf said that it's not necessarily a permanent situation, it just happened that they entered by him, the sages. אמרו לו, אדוננו המלך, עמך ישראל צריכים פרנסה. They said, our king, our master, we have economic issues, that people have a hard time to make a living. So in other words, they ask him for counsel. So Amcha Yisrael tzrichim parnasa, here we can derive something that relate to our days. That people needs to make a living. How they make a living? So the first suggestion King David have, which makes a lot of sense, Amar lahem lechu vehitparnesu ze mizeh. Go and make a living by helping each other. In those who are familiar with the ancient history, you see that many times when the world have economic issues, people do barters and joint ventures. In our simple languages, it's like, okay, I'm giving you a shoes, and in exchange you do a haircut for me, etc. So it's like doing some type of trying to do business with each other. It's in a very general, we always say that we should help each other in a sense of the business. If we have a chance to help someone, we should make an effort to help each other. So that's the idea that he suggested at the first approach, that people should help each other. אמרו לו, אין הקומס מצביע את הארי ואין הבור מתמלא בכל התיאור. When the lion is hungry, giving him a little bone will not satisfy him. Or when you pull out from the well one block, it's or you talk about a well of water, it's not enough if you give a little drop. That's not sufficient. Amar lehem, so he gave them a special permission. He says, guess what? If that's the case, if it's not enough what you can do by each other, so it's not considering a milchemet mitzvah, a war of mitzvah, it's optional war, but since you can extend it yourself, so go ahead and pishtu yidechem begdud, and go ahead and create a extension of the property, which means that you extend the ability of people to make a living. You go further with the border of the land. Miyad yoatzim ba'Achitofel, it was an advisor by the name of Achitofel. Early stage of his life, he was a very good, excellent advisor. Unfortunately, he made a mistake and he ended up in a very sad way. But the beginning was ingenious and very good counsel. So they went and they asked him, v'nimlachim b'Sanhedrin, and they go ahead and they ask by the Rabbinic Supreme Court, in order to go, the Tosefta explained that in order to go to an optional war, you need to get a special permission from the Supreme Court. And then v'shoalim ba'urim etumim, we explained several times that the high priest have the breastplate, and they basically need to get a response from Hashem, from God, to say that it's okay. So it's a procedure that they did, and if it's all approved, they went ahead and either extended the land or go to a state of war. אמר רב יוסף, מה יקרא דכתיב אחרי אחיתופל בניהו באוני הידע ואביתר ושר צבא למלך מואב, which means that there's a different name of people that involve in the state of war. אחיתופל זה יועץ. אחיתופל, it's the name of one of the advisor. That's from the book of Chronicles. וכן הוא אומר, ועצת אחיתופל אשר יעץ בימים ההם, that's what we said that in the book of Samuel. We said in Samuel that Achitofel gave an advice, כאשר ישאל איש בדבר האלוקים, that the person asked by the name of the Lord. ובניהו בן יהוידע, זה Sanhedrin, and Beniyahu, son of Yehoyada, this referred to the Rabbinical Supreme Court. Beniyahu was the chief of the Sanhedrin, was the Av Bedin, Rashi said. So they asked him, Ve'eviatar, Elu Urim Vetumim. Eviatar, it's referred to the breastplate. The Eviatar was the Kohen Gadol, and he consulted with the Urim Vetumim, and that's the way they process. Ubnayahu behen Yehoyada al hakreti ve'al hapleiti. Ubnayahu ben Yehoyada is the one who brought kreti. Upleti is the expression of a succinctness and exactness, which means he can give the exact answer that remove all the doubt. ולמה נקרא שמה קריטי ופלטי? They now elaborate to explain these specific words, קריטי and פלטי. קריטי שכורתים דבריהם, the word קריטי is like cutting, render the words precisely. פלטי, the word פלטי meant שמופלאים בדבריהם, that they are wonders in the words. ואחר כך צבא למלך יואב. And then after this, Yoav, the commandment of the king's army, only after this process, Yoav was the commander, he sent the soldiers to the battle. אמר רבי יצחק בר עדה באמר לרב, אמר רבי יצחק ברד רב אידי, מה יקרא אורה כבודי, אורה הנבל וכינור העיר השחר? What is the meaning of this text that said, David said, awake, O my soul, awake, O plaster of a harp, I shall wake in the dawn. So, Rabbi Zera אמר, משה לעולם הווידע. That Rabbi Zera said that Moshe Rabbeinu really did know the exact moment of the midnight. ודוד נמי הווידע, and King David also knew it. So, now you contradict what you said earlier. You said earlier is that he needs this harp, וכיוון דוד הווידע כינור למה לי? Saying, David know exactly what's midnight, why you tell me earlier that what? That he needs a harp? להתעורר משנתי. In those days they don't have the iPad or the clock that wake you up, the telephone, so you need this harp to wake him up. וכיוון דמשה הווידע למה לי לממה כחצות. So if you tell me that Moshe Rabbeinu knew exactly, so why the text said כחצות and about middle of the night? Moshe כסבר צמא הסתגדני פרעה. Moses thought that maybe Pharaoh astrologist maybe thinking wrongly, ויאמרו משה בדאי הוא, and they may say that Moses was untruthful because he was afraid. Rashi explained here that he knew the exact time of the middle of the night, and the people who work for Pharaoh, the ancient Pharaoh, the astrologers, they have wrong calculations. So if he said that the plague will start in exactly time of the middle of the night, and the moment of their time, it's a time that they calculate the plague, it starts a different time. So they said, oh, he's not truthful. So he said about midnight. So about midnight, when he gave a signal, so no one said that he said 12:00 and it happens at 11:30 or 12:45. And what we derive from that? המאמר, למד לשונך לומר איני יודע. It's so important for a person to say, when you're not sure about something, I do not know. Shema תתבדה ותאחז. Otherwise, they can cut you in a falsehood. If you say something that is not exact, people can misconstrue you and can misinterpret what you meant. And it happens, unfortunately, many times that people say a thing that is not exact and it can be a misleading information. Rav Ashi אמר, בפלגה אורתא דתליסר נגה ארבסר. Rav Ashi said that Moses was standing in the middle of the night between the 13th of Nisan and the morning of the 14th. Havakai ve'ache kamar Moshe l'Yisrael, amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Jewish people. That's what God said. Lemachar, tomorrow, kachatzot halayla, at the middle of the night, ki ha'idna, like the midnight of today, ani yotze betoch Mitzrayim, I shall go forth in the midst of Egypt. So again, you see here that it's about midnight. We don't say that the exact, he said approximately midnight to avoid any misunderstanding.